Okay, today we're at the home of Alice and Fred Lupke, and I would like to talk to Alice about the old days, her school teaching and so on. And your full name,
Alice Baker Lupke.
and you had no middle name.
No,
Okay, and your date of birth.
I was born October 23rd, 1914, at home in Madison Township, I think.
Okay, and your husband's full name.
Fred James Lupke, and we were married on December 30th, 1939,
And his date of birth.
May 10th, 1910.
Okay.
May 29th, 1910.
Okay. And were you born at home?
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Now, you had two brothers, is that correct?
Yes.
And their names?
And Stevie was born September 28, 1912, and Robert was born August 20th, 1916. And then I had three sisters. Florence Heckford was born May 10th, 1908. Pauline was born January 3rd, 1910, and Virginia was born April 6th, 1924.
And your parents?
My dad was born January 11th, 1887.
And his full name was?
William Stewart Baker. And he died on June 15th, 1965 at the age of 78. They were married on February 8, 1907.
And what was your mother's full
And
name?
my mother's name was Lula Josephine Taylor. And I think that's all I know to think about that.
Okay. And what did your father do for a living, or your parents?
Always farm. And we lived on two different places. We lived in Bluffton Township on 80 acres, and when his family outgrew that, he bought 160 acres in Madison Township, where I lived most of my life.
And that's where Robert and Dorothy Baker lived?
That's where Robert and Dorothy live now.
Okay. There's always been a story about Grandma Baker's apron.
Yes, that was like everybody else's. It was used to carry eggs or chips or corn cobs to make fire. And also it was used to wipe noses when it was necessary.
Okay. What games did you play as kids?
We played a lot of little games around the place, but our main fun was hunting woodchucks. It seems strange, but that was one thing we did, and you got 15 cents for every top that you could take from a woodchuck.
And how did you kill them?
I don't know, but I'm sure Stevie was the one that had to do that, because I'm a chicken when it comes to anything like that.
And you said yesterday he didn't have a gun, he probably used a stick or a trap.
And probably trapped them.
Yeah. Okay. And how about winter?
We had the most fun on the knoll, we called it, a big high hill not far from the buildings. And we'd go up on the hill and go down almost to Goldbronson's on the level ground. There was also a little creek there that we had fun playing in. It went right by the house and on down to Goldbronson's. I don't know how many people will remember that place, but Sarah Graves lives there now.
Okay. And you said that you, yesterday you told me you built a raft, you used to meet there?
Yes, we had a creek to the north of our buildings, and we'd go down there. There was a woods there, and a big kind of a lake that was a part of the creek. And we built a little raft, taking boards and things we could find among the trees, and we built a little raft, and one person could go across the lake. We had a stick to make it go. And that was a gathering place for all family around, neighbors.
Mhm. Okay. And did you take any family trips when you were a kid?
No, the most trips we took would be to Bluffton or to Borough, to family members. And there was a lot of that. We had family gatherings all the time. And so we got to know our cousins just as well as we knew our brothers and sisters.
And the Taylors lived in Bluffton, correct?
Yes, my mother was born right in Bluffton, and lived there until she was married.
And your dad was born in
Up
Borough?
near Borough. And they seemed to go places, so I suppose there was maybe dances in Borough and Bluffton, and that's where they met.
Now, when you went to country school through 8th grade, and then you had to go to town to go to high school,
And in those days, as far as I know, I can remember, we had gravel maybe part of the time, but mostly it was mud roads. But Dad would take us down, and because we had to take all our food with us and stay there all week, and then he would come and get us on Friday night and bring us home. But when he was too busy, we just walked home. Didn't go out to the farm.
and that's about 5 miles?
About 5 miles. And we had to go a mile to get our mail every day. We went to the pavement and then east for a half a mile. And that was just all the time. The mail wasn't brought. And
There was like a drop-off point?
no, there wasn't any, they didn't go by, right by our farm. The same way with school. We walked a mile and a half to get to school. And of course, one thing was we brought the mail home with us when we get to the, at night. So
That was in grade school?
that was in grade school. And then I went to a high school and moved in with Emma Isted Baker's family, along with, I think there were 8 other girls. They had a huge big house on River Street, and I moved in there and stayed for 4 years. Pauline was there 1 year while I was there, and so she'd been there alone for 3 of her school years.
And who were some of the other ladies or girls there?
Jessie Yarwood, Carol Ann's sister, Myrtle Thompson, Richard Thompson's sister, Ethel Yarwood from over by Kellner, and Eldis Weedo from Ridgeway. She was Eldis Anderson, Edward Fredden's sister. And then Pauline and myself and Irene Baker.
That would be the first cousin of yours too,
Right.
Eileen.
So we were a house full.
And there's always been a story about my grandma and the dishes.
Yes, she always managed to get someplace else when it was dish time.
And usually it was the bathroom.
The
wasn't it?
bathroom, and she'd take plenty of reading material with her.
And then she'd sing too, right?
But yes, she entertained us while we were doing the dishes.
Did she ever get any mischief in her and Elizabeth when they were in?
Oh, they were into mischief all the time. And I remember one time they told me to go to a neighbor's, dress up like a boy, and go to a neighbor who also had girls rooming. And they said, you put on men's clothes and go down and ask her for a date because I think she'd go with anybody. And I was silly enough to do what they told me, and I did that. That was one of their
So did you
tricks.
get a date then?
Yeah, she would go, but then I'd tell her who I was, so I didn't get any place with that.
Do you remember any other stories about Grandma?
Well, she always before she was married, she, on a hot day, she'd always go to the cellar that had dirt floor, and she'd sit there. And there again, she'd sing and enjoy herself while we were doing the work.
How much did it cost you for a room?
We paid $1.50 a week. And then we took all our own food with us. We could use their stove to cook.
So you'd have to bring your food from your house on the weekend?
Yes. And they'd last you all week because there wasn't much money to spend foolishly.
And after you graduated from high school, you went through 12th grade and then you graduated?
I graduated, and at that time you could teach school after 4 years of high school and had that training. And I began teaching in the Knudsen School over here when I was 18 on Friday, and I started on Monday morning. And I remember I had 15 boys and girls, all ages. And Joel and Emma Fredham hired me that time and gave me a start. And I started out at $75 a month, but the next year, because Jessie Yarwood was ready to teach, they let her have my school. And I went over to what is called the Horgan School across from Johnson's. And Irene Hippie Johnson was a little baby then, so I didn't have her in school, but that gives you a little idea where I taught. And that year, because of the Depression, it dropped to $45 a month. And of course you couldn't really afford board and room, so I walked. And if you follow, I went as far as Ellis Pilgrim's, and then I went across by Ingebrigtson's and through Gulbronson's, where Sarah Graves lives now, and on home. And I did, for maybe a couple of the years, ride our white pony, Bill. And I had to put the feed on the saddlebag, and my food, and my books that I had to carry. And I drove up to what's now Clayton, England, and left the pony in the barn, and the man that lived there, Mr. Anderson, would feed him. Then I'd walk up and get my pony and go home at night. And in the meantime, I had started the fire and gone and gotten a pail of water for the cooler and many things. And so by the time the boys and girls got there, why, the place was warm. But when I first started the school, we had a big, kind of like a furnace, a big stove, huge stove, set in the middle of the schoolhouse. And we sat as many as 3 in a wide desk, because there was a lot of pupils at that time.
And where did you go from the Horgan School then?
Then I went, after 4 years there, then Thelma Lupke was ready to teach, and so she took my school, and I got your folks' school. Your grandma and grandpa. And I remember to get that school, your dad or your grandpa lent me a pony, and I drove over there before I went to school, way over under the church. And that's where Carl Bergen lived, and he hired me to take the school next year. Then I was there a year or 2, and then George Ness wanted me to come to White Hill. And then I had 2 years there before I was married. I did teach after John got in school. So I had about 15 years altogether.
And you also you got married during your last year of teaching.
Yes, and that was a no-no because they wouldn't let married women.
What was the
Teach.
reason for that?
But I never knew, but you just didn't. And I saw in the paper not long ago where some lady wrote, so I know I wasn't dreaming, you know, that it happened. And so we were secretly married on December 30th, 1939, and no one knew it until March 1st, and then we moved to Fred's grandpa's place. His Aunt Ottilia rented us the place, and that's where we started out.
So you taught till May then, you told them.
Yes, I told them that they didn't throw me out, so,
They finished up the
so
school
I
year.
finished up the school year. Mhm.
Okay. And do you remember anything about my grandpa and grandma's wedding?
Yes, I think that quite a few people went with us up to the parsonage. And Reverend Jordahl was the minister, and as I remember, it was the place where they still have the parsonage. And they were married in the morning, I believe, because we went back home for a new meal. And then after, about 3 o'clock then, they left on their honeymoon trip and went to, I believe, Uncle Lars Malice. It was a Malice in Dakota. And they were gone. When they came back, they brought Virginia a doll. That I remember.
She was little. And
Uh-huh.
grandma's color of her dress was,
A very pale green. It was just beautiful. I remember the
and you
color.
were the,
I was the bridesmaid, and Spencer Haga was best man.
and do you remember anything about my dad's birth?
Yes, I was, the first year I taught in the Canixie School, that started in September, and I remember on October 24th, when my mother got away from the phone before I walked to school and said that Pauline and Ole had a little boy, and that was Gerald, and that was in 1932.
Do you remember anything else about my dad's growing up years?
Yes, our nieces and nephews were just like family to us. I mean, Gerald and John, for instance, were like brothers, more than cousins, and that was true of everybody. Stevie's girls and Robert's girls, and we celebrated everything. Not one person missed a birthday, from the year old until you were in the 70s or whenever. And that was the way that we just get close.
Mm-hmm.
And Christmas and every holiday and everybody's birthday was celebrated.
And Howard's, do you remember anything about Howard's birth?
Yes, I remember that your grandma went down to stay at Istids because that's where she had stayed when she went to school. And she went down there, and then it was kind of a false alarm. So then she came home again and went back the next day. And then I remember Howard was born.
Now, they were born in the hospitals. Right?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Virginia was born in the hospital, the only one of us.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then there was a baby between Howard and Phyllis, and that was Roger.
Roger. Roger was born, I believe, in 1937 or 38, and died the following April from whooping cough. And that was the year that Emma was married, that he died in the spring, in April.
And how about Phyllis?
Now Phyllis was extra special because you see they had 3 boys and fine with Phyllis. And I remember that real well too. And it was announced that they had Phyllis. Mm-hmm.
Well, is there anything else that you'd like to, any stories?
Not especially, unless you have something that you...
That always just...
Yeah, I think that's...
I can't, I'm blank.